I'm living up to my reputation of being a Kyle by drinking Monster Energy drinks. Oh boy, what's wrong with me? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're back for more. Okay, so this time we're moving on to tone and mood. If you guys are watching this, this is the video series about elements of lit. So far we're like, I don't know, past halfway, something like that. And what we just covered was theme. Theme is the universal hidden message of the story. Beyond that, we did characters and point of view. So we're going to move on. We are going to start a new section right over here, and we're going to do tone and mood. Tone and mood, just so you know, are technically different things, but for simplicity's sake, I am going to lump them together. Now remember, I get all my definitions from the Bedford Glossary of Critical Literary Terms, 3rd edition, which is the book that a lot of college professors use in higher ed situations, and so that is the one I'm going to go off of. So for tone and mood, what you need to know is that this is basically the emotional attitude of the story, okay? The emotional helps if you have your notebook set up, all right? The emotional attitude of the story. Okay. Now, as you can see right down there on my PowerPoint, I do have some common types or examples if you need to see some. But here's the thing that you want to know for tone and mood. You really want to try and use more complex terms rather than things like happy or sad. Not gonna lie, every single story is gonna have happy and sad in it, okay? That's just kind of how it is. You know, you need to have some sort of variety. You have to have changes in the tone and mood of your story, because otherwise your story is gonna be really boring. You know, if you're reading something like, which I constantly reference, if you're reading something like the Red Rising series, which, you know, I recommend to kids all the time, this book series is a roller coaster on fire of emotions. So that's just kind of how it is. You know, another book series I could really recommend is the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. Yeah, this book series is also a roller coaster of emotion. That's just kind of how it is. So you need variety. Okay. Also, the reason why I have the yin and yang up there is because you're going to have complements with emotions. So just keep it in mind, like, in order to have sadness, you need to have happiness or something akin to that for it to work, okay? Now, moving on. How do you actually find tone and mood? It's actually not that hard. What I recommend for my students is that they ask themselves 3 questions, okay? Now, keep in mind, if you are a teenager who is reading this, it's going to be really easy for you to be sarcastic here, or verbally ironic at least. So, kind of have to take it seriously, all right? Just work with me here. All right, the first thing you're going to want to ask yourself is, how does the author feel, okay? I'm just going to write down, ask yourself, forgot to do that, ask yourself 3 questions, and then answer them. Number 1, how does the author feel? How does the author feel? Now, keep in mind, kiddos, you are probably never going to get an answer to that question unless you're able to ask the author directly, you know. And if your author is dead, you know, grave robbing is really gross, and, you know, you're not going to get an answer. So don't even bother. Okay, that'd be a waste of your time. Save yourself the trip to Home Depot for a shovel. You don't need one. Okay, now I've had the luxury of like talking to several different authors, you know, Pierce Brown being one of them. And there are like questions like these that pop up, and, you know, you're able to get an answer. But for the most part, you're never going to know. You know, nobody really knows what Shakespeare was thinking when he wrote some of the stuff that he did. And that's okay. But what you're trying to do here as an intelligent reader, you know, regardless of whether or not you think you are, what you're trying to do is figure out where is the author coming from when they made this piece. So I have an example that I usually use in my classroom. I really like the poem Storm Warnings by Adrienne Rich. And that is a poem, you know, it's kind of a feminist poem, and it is created to talk about how people need to protect themselves and shut themselves in because of an oncoming storm. Now, the storm is a symbol for, other things. It could be emotional abuse. It could be relationship abuse. It could be physical abuse. We don't really know. Okay. Now, I can't ask the author how she felt when she created that poem, but, I can reflect on my own life experience, and then I can project my own life experience onto said poem so I can make a best guess. Okay. So keep in mind, you're never going to know 100%. You're just trying to make an educated guess. When the creators of Toy Story were making that story, what do you think they were trying to get across? Did they have childhood trauma? Did they have life experience that they were trying to share with the audience? And you can watch documentaries and ask them and things like that, but not everybody has the time for that, all right? So, anyway, moving on. The next question you want to ask yourself is, how do the characters feel? How do the characters feel? That's an easier question, because you are the one basically reflecting on the characters, and you're going to be able to answer that question based on what your characters do. So that's a lot easier to work with. How did the characters feel? Now keep in mind, characters are probably going to feel a lot of different emotions. They're probably going to be sad. They are probably going to be happy in most things. They're probably going to feel conflicted in a lot of things. Okay, that's normal because people are like that. So all you have to do is try and answer that as best you can, and try to use complicated words. Don't do happy and sad. Do like apathy, or maybe they're being cynical, maybe they're being empathetic, maybe they're depressed, things like that. Finally, the last question you want to ask yourself, and again, teenagers, I'm warning you, don't be verbally ironic or sarcastic here. The last question is, how do I feel? Now, when you ask yourself, how do I feel, you are not saying, how does Demony feel? You are asking yourself, how do you feel about the story? I can guarantee you, especially if you're a teacher watching this, I can guarantee you teenagers 99% of the time are going to be like, I'm bored. Okay, congratulations. You've just now said the same joke that every single kid says and has said since the dawn of time. Good for you. You get a cookie. Okay, kindly throw away that dumb answer and come up with an actually good one. So an actually good answer would be like reflecting on your own life experience. Okay? So, for tone and mood, if you are a person who is like, well, I can't really like put myself in the shoes of a character, I would ask you like, well, how much self-reflection do you do? Are you in tune with your own emotions? Because if you are in tune with your own emotions, then you're going to be able to have an easier time to relate to your characters. Now, in my own like perfect ideal world, everyone would be extremely self-reflective, and we would be able to understand characters in a multitude of ways. But we don't have that kind of world. So, see, my thing is like, how do I explain this? Like, I can really put myself in a character's shoes. That's just something that I am really, really good at, because I get emotionally invested in a story. Now, not every single story. Like, there are some stories I'm bored to tears with, but when I find that one that I'm like, man, I really like this book or movie or whatever it is, I can really relate to the characters, or at least sympathize with the characters, and I can figure out what they're feeling. So, like when I read the book Ender's Game, which I have a copy of right here. Man, when I read this book, this is my own personal copy. It's been beat up and abused and used. This is the copy of the book that I have read physically myself, probably well over 30 times. I really like this book. I don't necessarily like the author, but because he's kind of a bigot, but whatever. I really like this book, and like there's a part in chapter 14 in particular. Don't look at the book if you haven't read it, because it'll be hardcore spoilers. But anyway, there's a part in chapter 14 that every single time I read that part, I get goosebumps, because like it's just so awesome of a scene. Every time I read it to my kids out loud, I'm just like, man, I get pumped. Like, it's so good. Well, that's because I'm in tune with my own emotions. Like, yeah, that's just how it is. Now, every now and then I'll get a boy, like a male student, who is like, well, I'm not really in tune with my emotions. I don't really cry. I don't really do this or that. So I do encourage my kids to kind of throw away that idea, that toxic masculine idea of like boys don't cry. You know, that's kind of a lie. Boys are just as emotional as girls, and the other way around too. So I don't really understand where that's coming from. But, you know, watching a story and being able to cry to that story, like that shows a very, very a large amount of depth for your character in particular, because that means that you are emotionally invested and you care about the things that are happening to people that don't even exist or characters that don't even exist. Well, that's a sign of maturity in my eyes. I don't know. You know, like watch Homeward Bound. Like, man, if you're a little kid and you watch that movie and you don't cry, man, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. But anyway, yeah, be in tune with your own emotions. It'll help you figure things out. It'll help you in the real world too. The other example I gave was this. So I have had many students over the years that I have taught, and you know, I've obviously had students that have had to deal with family members who have passed away due to cancer. Well, you know, a kid who has had that life experience is going to read a book like The Fault in Our Stars in a very different way than somebody who has never had to put up with that problem before or that situation. So that's just how it is. Think about your own life experience and project it into the story and see what you can get out of it. And if you can't relate to the characters, try to understand where they're coming from. All right, anyway, that does it for tone and mood because I'm rambling. So we're going to move on to the next element. So, yeah, if you need the notes, they're right down below. But, yeah, okay, bye.